I will experience insecurity again. I hope I experience it again because that's evidence of growth. And when I do, the same 7 practices that solve the problem at the last level of growth will be useful again at the next level.
Hi, I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to Lux Media Studios. Hello and welcome. You've landed on Zero Limits Living. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. Every week, I bring you inspiration and information to transform your life. The show's become so popular so quickly, you can now see it or hear it on 1,000 platforms across the planet, including Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, YouTube, and probably anything you can name and anything you're using right now. But to make it easy for you, I'm putting all the episodes, years worth of them, in one place. Go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com and you can binge on all of the episodes or as many as you like. You can also sign up to be notified whenever there's a new episode. So go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com. People ask me about coaching. I started a coaching program some 20 years ago. Trademarked it, proves it worked. It's already been tested. It's been around the block. Hundreds of thousands can attest to this. But find out for yourself. Go to miraclescoaching.com. No charge, no obligation. Miraclescoaching.com. Go check out tires, kick the tires, and ask some questions and find out if this is a match for you. My latest program is called Mental Time Travel System. I know you're curious. So go to mentaltimetravel.system.com and check it out. You can change the past to create a better present. And out of the present, you can create a glorious future. Mentaltimetravel.system.com. If you know me and my work, I'm an author. I've written 90 some books. Got a new one coming out in July of 2024, and I'll tell you what that is later. But the latest book right now is Unexpected Kindness. And if you go to unexpectedkindnessbook.com, you can learn all about it. Of course, you can go to Amazon. There's the print version, the hardcover, the paperback, the Kindle, and an audio version of unexpectedkindness.com. Now, this show is really an act of unexpected kindness. And my guests come on as an unexpected kindness to me and to you. So I ask you to lean forward, to pay attention, to take notes, to be alert, because these shows are designed to elevate your consciousness, expand your potential, and help you attract and achieve the dreams that you long for and you deserve. Now, there's one thing that may stop people, and has probably slowed you down in the past, and that's some version of insecurity. You may not have called it insecurity. You may have called it a lack of confidence. You may have called it fear. You may have called it doubts. But in some way, shape, or form, there was a sense of insecurity that was holding you back and may still be holding you back. With that in mind, let me tell you who my guest is today. Jaemin Frazer is an author, TEDx speaker, and the voice behind the popular 1 Minute Coach radio segments featured on stations all around Australia. As founder of the Insecurity Project, he has devoted his life to helping people overcome insecurity so they can show up to life unhindered by doubt, fear, or limiting beliefs. He is recognized as one of Australia's best life coaches and a leading voice globally on the subject of personal insecurity. He's written several books. I am holding one and reading from one called Unhindered: The 7 Essential Practices for Overcoming Insecurity. I found this book with a quick search for books on insecurity. The rave review said, "This is the #1 book to get on this subject." I got it. I started reading it. I fell in love with it. I was having ahas and awakenings, and I reached out to the author and said, "Would you mind coming on the show?" He's here. He said yes. Jaemin Frazer, how are you?
Oh, Joe, I'm very well, thank you. It's so lovely to be on the show, and thank you so much for the invite.
Of course, I'm genuinely impressed with your book. I've been reading Unhindered. You probably can't see all the pages that are dog-eared there, but I turned back, I made notes, made some notes over here, and then I started collecting Jaemin Frazer books. You've got a couple that are already out there, and you have a new book that'll be coming out very soon. I've already pre-ordered it. We're here to talk about this, your book, Unhindered, and the subject of insecurity. And I want to deep dive into this because my commitment is to help as many people as possible through this means and everything else that I do. And thank you for joining in this. I think the very first thing to do is define insecurity. As I attempted to do in the intro, I want people to relate to that word while they may not use that word in their everyday life. What is insecurity?
Well, it is the fear of somehow being found out as inadequate. That there's something lacking. There's some limit. There's some inadequacy with you that's not enough. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're not pretty enough. There's something less than you, and you don't want people to have that confirmed about you. So it's this fear and concern that there is an ability to be found out as less than you ought to be.
And have you found that everybody has that fear, or do some of us get out of jail with some sort of special card and we don't experience that? Or is this across the board? Is it a universal experience?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely universal, that it's unavoidable. Even perfect parents don't prevent their children from developing limiting beliefs about themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually the design. I don't think that's a glitch in the system. I think it's a wonderful part of the game of life that you actually come into your adulthood with work to do back in your childhood. So yeah, it's unavoidable. It's universal. Most people will never solve it. They'll manage it. But I'm convinced not only can you solve it, you actually must. It's your most important adult work. And so, yeah, we've all got some work to do.
You know what's amazing about you, and I see this throughout your book, and now I'm hearing it within just minutes of talking to you. It's in your personality, it's in your mindset, and that is seeing the good in the struggle. Because you
Yeah.
just said, yes, everybody has this sense of insecurity, being found out, not being good enough. But you also said it's kind of a good thing. It's kind of our work. It's kind of what we need to do. So I applaud you for that. And I agree that we can look at it that way. But I can't help but wonder, why is it set up that way? Why do we have to go through that? For many people, this is a version of hell. This is
Yeah.
your business. This is your livelihood. That you do this as a coach. You have this insecurity project. You're doing all kind of wonderful things. So you're benefiting from it. But the rest of us are in the hell of trying to get through it. Why is it a good thing?
Hmm. I mean, there's some timeless wisdom about the idea that the obstacle is the way.
Right?
Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic writers, said, the thing that seems to impede the path, no, that is the path. And so I'm a big believer that everything changes when you realize life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. So if you can kind of zoom out a bit and just see it as a setup and go, okay, resistance is not fun. However, have a think about when you go into the gym, you look for resistance. That's what you're seeking out. You're trying to find hard things, heavy things to strengthen you. You don't go and find the easy path. You choose the hard path on purpose so you can become stronger. So here you go. You've got an inbuilt hard path. You've got existential angst. You've got fear. You've got woundedness. That's not the reason why you can't have a good life. That's your opportunity to have a good life. That's the
That's
gift.
good.
When
That is
when you
that's
see that, it changes everything.
no, that I love what you just said there, Jamin. I'm kind of highlighting it so make sure everybody saw it or heard it. And that was the idea that this is, can you repeat it? It's about the idea that this is not the thing keeping you from having a good life. This is your way to have a good life.
Yeah, the wound is the gift. So many people are pointing to, well, because I am wounded, therefore my life is somehow less than it ought to be or it could be. If only these terrible things weren't said to me or done to me in my past, then I would be okay. That's not true. That's not it at all. It's no, because you have been tricked and you've misunderstood your own nature, and you have every reason to feel like you don't belong, you don't deserve. No, that's a setup for you. That's a great opportunity because it's a hero's journey setup. There's an insurmountable obstacle that only you can solve. That's for you to become strong.
I'm just chuckling at your enthusiasm, your childlike joy in talking about the struggle, because for most of us out here, it's like, that's not fun. Okay, I've been assigned this problem in my life, and now I've got to go wrestle it because that's my obstacle, and the obstacle is away, and I don't joyfully want to do it. And you're looking at it like, hey man, this is the game. This is what's fun about it. When you get through it, you get to the other side, you celebrate even more. So I'm celebrating the joy that you have talking about this. That helps shift perception right there, because you're looking at these challenges differently than the average person, in my
And
opinion.
that's so much about the insecurity work. I feel like most of my day is spent coaxing scared kittens out from under the lounge with a saucer of milk. It's this huge level of angst that gets built
So
up
so he-
toward
so
this.
here's your next book. It's called Coaching Scared Kittens. And it could be a children's book. And you can do this. Adults will buy it, of course, because adults are going to read it to their kids. But Coaching Scared Kittens, great title. Get a little bit of a fun charm to it, is lighthearted, yet you can still get your point across. No charge for that one, Jaemin. You can take that as a book idea and go ahead and start writing it.
I appreciate
What,
it. Thank
of
you.
course. What I'm curious about is how you discovered this for yourself. We got to go back into your life, because you weren't always an author. You didn't always have the Insecurity Project going on, being a coach, any of that stuff. How did you discover this? How did you fall into this?
So when I was 23, I grew up in a Christian world. My parents were devoted Christians. That worldview made sense to me. I really loved it. It answered the questions I was asking. I'm a very wholehearted kind of person. So when something makes sense to me, I tend to be completely enamored with it. And so it became something that I felt was a real calling and life path for me. And so I actually went to Bible college, did a degree in theology, and got given the leadership of the church that I grew up in when I was only 23.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so spent 10 years as a church pastor. And was a good pastor. I felt like it was what I was born to do. I was wholehearted about it. Uh, and yet there was a concern of mine that it wasn't a very effective way to be useful to people. Just my experience was Christians were typically outsourcing responsibility for change onto God. And so although I was invited into their world to have conversations about change, they very rarely led to change because people were waiting for divine intervention. And they felt the idea of personal responsibility and self-awareness was far too secular. That really confused me and ultimately created enough uncertainty for me to explore other modalities for being useful. So I got introduced to the coaching skill set from a mentor, and I instantly thought, this is a missing technology. Like, this stuff belongs. So felt such excitement and such joy that I still have today, because it's so useful. And I dived into that world wholeheartedly and thought, this is what I really would love to be able to do for a bigger audience. So what happened, though, was I was so excited, so passionate, so clear about it, but I'd ventured out of the safe, known, comfortable world I grew up in, where I was known, liked, trusted. Now I'm going out to a world I have no credibility and no track record, no audience, no influence. And now I want to write a book. And so, I've excitedly told my wife and my best friend about the first book I'm going to write. When I was away studying, I've gone back to my hotel room, written the first chapter of my first ever book, with such energy and enthusiasm. And then literally the moment I shut the lid on that laptop, all that excitement turned to fear and dread, and like, oh no, what have I done? I've committed to a path that is going to highlight that I'm not actually capable of doing this. So I uncovered a mountain of insecurity by stepping out that I didn't even know was there. I had no reason to discover it. I was good at what I did, had a platform. So it was just that stepping out and stepping up that exposed this mountain of fear, and it paralyzed me. It was so terrifying. And I just thought, what is this thing? And can anything be done with it? And so that began my curiosity. I'm a very pragmatic person as well. I feel like I have an engineering bent, how I see the world. So I love structure. How do things work? Why are things the way they are? And so that began my curiosity about what is this fear and what is it called and how does it work and can anything be done? And so I discovered through facing my own insecurity that there were plenty of people who had found a way to do the work and to rescue themselves from this. And I just couldn't see anyone had modeled the path. And so that became my passion for myself first and foremost, to reverse engineer. How did you do it? Show me the way. And I discovered in every case, whether people were aware of it or not, there were 7 practices that made all the difference. So I thought, wow, if I could practice these 7, that'll change my life. And then it did. And so then out of the overflow of what I'd learned, I thought it would be useful to create an explicit model for others to use as well, because this seems like a universal problem. So I kind of stumbled on it, and then I was ruined for anything else, because it was like, now I have seen a path. How could I possibly hold this path back from others? So,
Wow.
all right, the Insecurity Project, and let's create some resources for people.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. And was this the book you were writing? No, you had a book before this.
No. So the first book that I wrote was called 12 Coaching Conversations Every Disciple Must Have. And so it was a
Oh,
way of trying to integrate my 2 worlds, this new coaching world that was opening up to me, and the Christian pastoral world that I'd
oh, I
grown up
see.
in. So
And is this your second book then? What?
that's book number 3.
Listen to you. You have to pause and count how many books you have. You went from starting a book and closing the laptop and falling into insecurity hell to saying, how many books have I written? 3. And I think you have more than 3. This is number 3, and you have another one after this, and I think you have another one coming out. So you have 5 or 6 at
Yeah,
least.
well, but I just heard in your bio you're up to 90. So
It's all relative, you know. Isaac Asimov wrote 500 and some books, and so when I look at him and I go, "I'm a slacker. I've been sleeping too much." I mean, I've only written 90 books. I'm nowhere near. It's all comparison. It's all relative, and it can all be used to make you feel insecure. I think this is part of the thing. There's so much in your book. I love your book, Unhindered: The 7 Essential Practices for Overcoming Insecurity. I urge everybody to go get it. And I'm going to jump around a little bit, because towards the end of the book, you talk about the story that we tell ourselves. And so I just started to say right there about other authors. You look at me and you could be insecure if you did a comparison. I look at Isaac Asimov. I could be insecure if I did a comparison, but I tell a different story. I'm just writing my own journey. How do we tell a different story? That is so important to your book. I know it's at the end of the book, but it is so important for each of us. And I hear about rewriting our story as much as you do, if not more. And I couldn't help but think, how do we help people write another story? There's people listening right now, watching right now. They need a new story. How do they recognize the story they have and rewrite the story?
I like Einstein's idea that it's important to make things as simple as possible, but no simpler.
Hmm.
So I have an aversion to oversimplification of these things, because there's a bit of work to do. And I think, as much as it would be incredible if you could just write some affirmations on your mirror,
Yeah.
and tell yourself it's all going to be okay, what I've discovered is that the old story is so well rehearsed and so ingrained, and you've got gathered so much evidence that it's not a story, that it is actually your life, that you have to deconstruct it first. And if you don't deconstruct and you just try and tack a new story over the top, then I think as soon as you get tired or stressed or triggered or anxious, that old story just unconsciously takes over, as it always has. So as hard as that sounds for people, I think the real work is to actually deconstruct the story that you are previously living out of or currently living out of. And if I think about that logically, well, then I would want to go back to the very start of that. If we're going to do that effectively, may as well go back to the very first page of that book, the very first time you laid a foundation for that story. So to me, that's the most useful data, because when people think about the story of their life, they become self-fulfilling prophecies and gather evidence upon evidence upon evidence that they're true. And so it can feel like a mountain of work to go back through all the experiences that have pointed to this fact that the story is true, to deconstruct it. I think that if you can go back to the foundation and deconstruct it there, then it has a ripple effect that kind of makes all the other dominoes fall down as well and deconstructs everything else. So I advocate going back to the beginning to deconstruct first. That's how it has to happen, and
So
then
can you give
you
me
clear it. You can get to the work of rewriting.
Jamin, I love this, and you're very wise and very experienced, and you're very clear. Can you give me an example so we can relate to what you're talking about, either from your life or somebody you've worked with, on helping them
Yeah,
rewrite the story by going back to root moment or whatever you want to call it,
yes,
root cause, and
sure. Um,
dismantling it?
First thing is you got to know what you're looking for, and that is to name the fear. Really, I think that's, again, that's not my wisdom. Yoda says, "Named must your fear be; before banish it you can." Um, I think it's a very logical question. Do you know what you're running and hiding from? Clearly, you are running and hiding. Clearly, if you do an audit of your energy, there's a lot of energy going into proving and defending, running and hiding. So, what exactly are you running and hiding from? What is this
Mm,
monster? I like Jordan Peterson's idea that things that go unnamed become monsters that consume us. So, be precise in your speech. So, I
mhm,
think the start is to go, well, what is it that's so terrible? And that's difficult for people, but clearly there's evidence because behavior never lies. So you can kind of, what must I believe about myself in order to behave like this? So you can track it back. But I think what you're actually looking for is an accusation. I think that's actually the thing. And
mm,
there is an origin to that. So you've come into the world relaxed about your nature, as every child has. There's no reason you wouldn't be, because the world seems to exist for you. You're not in a transactional model. You're not paying board. You're not helping out around the house. You're just there, and the adults in your world are caring for you, feeding you, nurturing you. So you're like, seems like it's enough. I'm enough just by being here. Um, but then as you age and consciousness comes on, and you kind of have to make sense of your world, and inevitably something goes down that's embarrassing or upsetting or disappointing, and you have to make sense of it. And
uh-huh,
so invariably, in a child's mind, when you're embarrassed, you tend to personalize those experiences against yourself and form an opinion about your own essence, your own nature. And so I like to define that opinion in its most precise form as an accusation, because it's like you see the world happening, you see your experience of it, and you go, I think there's a problem with you. You know,
uh,
there's a real issue here that's caused this to happen. So an example of that, to answer your question,
yeah.
one of my clients, when we're exploring this kind of defining moment, um, and by the way, no one seems to know this off the bat. People think, I can't find this; it doesn't exist. But my experience is it's always stored so precisely that the moment your life pivoted from feeling like you're okay to feeling like you were not, that is catalogued in full color with all the sound, all the emotion. It's just been suppressed because you haven't had the tools to deal with it. So it's there if you're ready.
Yeah.
So one of my clients, a very nervous character, always afraid that he didn't have any value in the world, no one really cared about him. Where did this story start? And so through a process of discovery, he has this memory about being 5 or 6 years old, and he lives in a cul-de-sac. There's a bunch of other boys his age that play in that street with him. They all ride BMX bikes. They love it. And he's the youngest, so his birthday's the last. And so one by one throughout the year, every child gets a new bike. All his mates upgrade their bikes one by one, and so he's still the kid with the old bike. And it's okay because his birthday's coming and it's all going to be okay. And so he pitches to his parents that all he wants for his birthday is a new bike. But his parents, like, they're busy people. They love him, but they're kind of seeing, oh, he's got a bike. What if we get him a laptop? Let's get him a laptop. That'll set him up for his future. We'll be parents of the year. So they pay 3 times more for his gift than they would have if they got him a bike. And so his birthday comes. He's so excited. My life's going to be okay. I'm going to fit in again. I'm not going to be teased. And so he wakes up so excited, looks at his present, thinks, hang on a minute, it doesn't look like a bike. And when he opens that present and finds a laptop, that is the day his life is over. Like, that is catastrophic in his psyche. The only way he can make sense of that is, wow, like, I thought my parents loved me. I thought I had value in this world. Clearly, the people who say they love you don't. Clearly, I don't matter enough for anyone to listen to me. So
Mm,
I will never hope for anything again. I will hide, I will run, I will make do because I do not have value. And so that innocuous moment where his parents are trying to love him, he interprets but the interpretation is a real accusation. You do not matter. You are worthless. And so I think if you're going to write a new story, you actually have to understand what was the thing, what was the word, and often it is just one word. For some people, it's you are weak. Some people, you are pathetic. Some people, it's you are stupid. And I love that level of precision because it kind of gives you a logic to interpret all the strategies you've developed in your life to cover and compensate that.
Wow.
So,
This
so
is
then the
fascinating.
process of, oh, sorry. Okay.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you because you're on a roll and this is fascinating. I just want to have clarity. The accusation is coming from yourself.
Well, it
So,
is.
yeah,
Mm,
because when I first heard the word accusation, it sounded like somebody is saying something that's a judgment about you, somebody on the outside, a parent, a neighbor. But that's not what you mean. The judgment, the accusation is ourself talking to ourself, assessing
it
ourselves.
is.
Yeah. And then the next part is you're saying in one word, we kind of sum it up. I'm stupid. I'm whatever, inferior, not loved, not liked, not something. Um,
Yeah.
the first thing I want to comment on though is in that moment when the accusation is made, there is the possibility of choice. Or maybe there isn't. I'm putting words in your mouth? Is there the possibility of choice? If that boy who got the laptop rather than the bicycle looked at it
Mm.
like, "Oh, cool, they love me so much they gave me a laptop," the rest of his life would have been different. Did he have
Sure.
choice in that moment, or is there a default? Is this part of the setup for his challenge and his obstacle?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, theoretically, of course, he's got choice because when I get to review people's childhood, and that's all I do every day is hearing this deconstruct.
Yeah.
It's one thing or the other, and you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, but it's always the small thing. Often people are thinking there must be some abuse, there must be some terrible trauma. Often it's a situation like that. Another client, it was um, uh, her dad picked her up, took her to the shops, and she forgot her shoes. And in her dad's map of the world, if you had a child without shoes on, that was a very embarrassing thing because it meant you were poor. And so he lost his mind at his daughter not having shoes. She's gone, oh my goodness, I thought I was smart enough to operate in the world without getting in this kind of trouble. Clearly, I'm stupid. So her own accusation. I love Don Miguel Ruiz's wisdom, The Four Agreements. I think that is one of the greatest books ever written.
Yeah.
And he says, look, you got to know this. It's not the words spoken to you or about you that change your life. It's just the ones you agree with. So I think to kind of go, you've got the pen this whole time. Like no one has the power to bless you or curse you without your permission. Because here it was in the bike story, the parents were trying to bless their son.
Yeah.
And yet he decided it was a curse.
Mhm.
So the same can happen when someone's trying to curse you. You could think maybe they're just jealous. Maybe they're not having
Right.
a good day. Maybe I need to love them. But to back to your point, theoretically, the child has a choice, but no one escapes their childhood. No one gets to 7 without
So,
finding some reason why
yeah.
their embarrassment, their disappointment, their upset was their own fault. And
This
so
is
it's
this is
inevitable.
very
Even perfect parents can't prevent this happening. So that's good
right.
news for
Right.
parents.
Well, the next big question though is how do you rewrite that? So we say that Mr. Boy with the laptop who wanted a bicycle, who doesn't think he's loved, goes back in time more or less with your help,
Absolutely.
and they're changing that moment somehow. Well, first of all, how do they change that perception, that memory? And then second, how do
Yeah.
you write a new story from there? I think this is really
Mm,
illuminating our way out.
mm. So I think agreement is a really beautiful word and a very useful word in this because not only did that child not only did that child accuse himself, he then agreed with his own accusation, and that was when he sealed his fate. So it's one thing to go,
Interesting.
you're stupid, but then to kind of go, yeah, I am. The moment you kind of agree, it's like that's locked in now. That's solid. You'll then
Interesting.
have
Yeah.
to use your best energy to cover and compensate so that no one ever finds out you're worthless because you know you're worthless. You've agreed. So
Right.
so the process of change is if I like the word accusation because it's a clean and has a clean word with like legal connotations. And so if you're accused of a crime, typically You get a defense attorney, you get your day in court, you get a chance to plead your case and say, hey, listen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. That wasn't me. But that's not what happens when we do it as children. We go straight from an accusation to agreement, and then it's locked in. There's a conviction that happens. And
Wow.
so that's unavoidable. So the process of change comes when you realize, oh my goodness, no one's coming to save me. I was the one who decided I was a problem in the first place. That wasn't my parents. That wasn't the bully. That wasn't the teacher. That was me. I did this. So until I'm willing to change my mind, nothing will change in my life. So this willingness to go back and review the data, like a cold case where some pro bono lawyer goes, I think there may have been a misunderstanding. I think someone's contaminated the evidence. I think there's a reason why this person in jail for 30 years didn't actually do the thing. And so they convince the judge to open the case. They go back, review the file and go, hang on, look at this. New data makes old data obsolete. And so in the same way, you bring in your adult skill, your adult love, your adult objectivity and empathy back to that child and going, I know you said you were stupid and I know you thought that was true, but I'm here to come back and have a look with you to see if that's accurate. Because maybe it is, right? Maybe you got it right.
Yeah.
You can't just dismiss the child's experience and say, don't worry about that. Just come with me, forget about that. Because the child was there and it felt true.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of got to go back and get your hands dirty and come back into the scene of the crime, but then do a thorough examination about, right, well, then let's look, is this true? If we replicate the experience objectively, can we get the same outcome? Can we get the same findings? Because if we can, all right, that's it. But if we can't, then, and we've looked everywhere, then it does change the story. Then, so that thorough review and that willingness to be wrong is a central part of thoroughly deconstructing the old story.
Believing Before Seeing, a new bestseller by Candace Barr. Order your copy today.
And what I hear is you actually don't even have to begin writing a new story at that point because you have organically changed the story. So if I, in the adult version of myself, go back in consciousness and relook at that version of I got a laptop when I wanted a bicycle kind of an experience, and then say, well, if the neighbor got a laptop and they wanted a bicycle and they were elated about it, maybe it reflects that there was a choice I could have made. And now as I look back at it, I can go, oh yeah, I guess I should be happy. I got a laptop before anybody else on the block. And I can do a lot more with a laptop than I can with a bike. And suddenly it's a whole new moment. But my point is, I don't actually have to write another story because that new interpretation creates the domino effect all through the next moments to this present time. Am I correct in
Yes,
stretching that
yes,
out?
you are. But if I could add this distinction,
Yes,
that what you've just
please.
done by reframing that experience is to remove the accusation. So now you're no longer worthless. Now you're no longer stupid. So then what are you instead? So I think it's not just enough to remove the old.
Good point.
Okay, you've got the pen and you're the storyteller. So what is true? And what will you now agree is true about you? Because if you don't replace the script and add a better one, then you've created this vacuum where you might then go looking for other negatives. And we do have more negative emotions than positive ones. We're always kind of aware of dangers.
Yes.
We're hardwired for safety. So I think in the vacuum, you're likely to still find some limit or lack. So that's the role of the loving adult to go, okay, I see who you are. You're wonderful. And I know in my own experience, the upgrade when my accusation was that I was average. That was one of the most profound accusations I had to work through. I didn't feel that I was bad, but my accusation was I was an ambitious kid, but I was never going to be good enough. I was not one of the big boys. I'd try hard, but I'd never win anything. So I accused myself of being kind of invisible, kind of vanilla, kind of just a kid who'd never really amount to anything. And so when I went back and found the first moment that I decided that was true and reviewed the data around, then went, oh, that's actually a misunderstanding. That's never been true. Then the question was, well, who are you really? And the exploration of my nature was this beautiful moment of discovery to go, hey, Jaemin, I see you and you're delightful. And it was like, me? I thought, no, you are delightful. I'm not saying this to put air in your tires. I see you. You are delightful. And so then I've got a chance to agree with that. And off the back of going, wow, I am delightful. Now I've got some substance to build a life on.
Yeah.
Now I've got a new narrative and a script that is actually going to empower me to live in the real world in a very powerful way, not just the absence of a negative script. I now have a powerful positive script instead.
Which you immediately agreed to. So you're sealing that or programming that in yourself so you can live from that moment. I want to be sure that we're clear about something here in case somebody watching or listening doesn't understand. When you say you're going back to look at this, you are taking your own conscious awareness to that point. It's not like you're going there with somebody else. You're not going there unless you have a coach, a therapist, something along those lines. How do you describe that? Because I'm trying to say that you are bringing your own self-awareness to the memory of being a child getting a laptop.
Mm.
How
Well,
do you describe the part of you that's going back?
so I think often I hear people talk about the inner child, and my experience is I don't feel like I have an inner child anymore. And so I feel like I have an inner adult. So when I hear people talk about the inner child, I think what they're describing is a part of them that's stuck inside an accusation. Like they've been
Ah,
accused of being stupid, and then that accusation's been agreed upon, and then it's kind of been a betrayal. It's like, well, then don't be you ever again. You're a problem. Now the separation of self starts, and it's like now you've got to be the ideal you, talk down to the real you. You've got to be better than you, other than you, different than you. And so I think when you're doing this work, is you're actually going back to a kid
yeah.
who's scared and alone and been ostracized. And so it is a little abstract to think about what does that actually mean. But if you can imagine a child has been locked out in the cold, told they were terrible, and you've got experience of that because that's this insecurity. That's all your energy you've been pouring into your life to not be that kid. So you know that that's true. There's evidence for that, and you've got to go back and rescue that child. You're the only hope because you're not the victim in the story. You're actually the bully. You're the one that decided there was a problem. So,
Well, that's another reframe. You're not the victim in the story. You're actually the bully. You're the one that wrote the script and sealed the deal. You're the one
yeah,
that passed sentence and then enforced it.
yeah,
That is so wild. Now, again, for clarity, and it's also in your book. Again, I'm looking at Unhindered, the book that I want everybody to go get, The 7 Essential Practices for Overcoming Insecurity by Jaemin Frazer. And that's the idea that in your book, you had this fascinating section somewhere in the middle where you're a runner. You wanted to run marathons. I don't know that you're still running or whatever. But you had hurt yourself at one point and you're wondering why. From what I understood, you had a conversation with your subconscious mind. From what I understood as I was reading the book, and correct me if I've misread this, you as a conscious adult was conversing with the pain itself and or the subconscious part that created the pain. How would you describe what was going on there? Because you had a breakthrough. And I kept thinking,
mm,
how would you do that? How do you teach people to do that? How do you get them to realize that whatever the pain is, you kind of brought it on, or at least an unconscious part of you. And if you have a dialogue with the unconscious part and you find out what it wants, it might heal yourself overnight.
mm. Yes. Well, I mean, this is the subject of the latest book.
Ah,
Called the self-permission method, and it's this very conversation because I think typically people live their life without much awareness. They've separated from themselves. They're trying not to be them. They're trying to be better than themselves, other than themselves, different, because they've accused themselves of being the problem. And so you can get away with that when you're young because you've got extra energy and you just push and run. But I think as you age, you don't have extra any energy anymore. And I think there's always this opportunity for your unconscious to go, hello, like I'm not who you think I am.
ah,
And I love that. I think that's inevitable. I think any level of self-awareness, you're going to get some attempt from your unconscious to get out of jail, to have their case reviewed, to get a chance to clear the misunderstanding. So I think I've been married 24 years, 25 this year, and I think marriage is the metaphor. I think that's the closest idea we've got to an intimate, lifelong, loving relationship. And so to think about what would it be like to have that kind of relationship with you, the parts of you in collaboration, intimacy, and to realize there are different parts of you, but there's at least two you can know. There is a conscious part, there is an unconscious part. You couldn't deny that. Most of what you do in any given moment you're not consciously thinking about how you breathe, how you walk. Out my arms are moving. I'm not telling them to do that. It's just how I am being me. So there are parts, and typically people don't run much of their life in collaboration with their unconscious. They dominate with the conscious mind. And so I think the best way for your unconscious to get your attention is with pain. And there's a bit of leverage there. And so in my case, my unconscious used running as a great way to get my attention because I love running so much. And so it was a smart play. Like, what if I was to take running off the table? Would that escalate my willingness to have a conversation that previously I didn't want to have? And so sciatic pain down my left leg stops me running, which means I can't do marathons, and I'm frustrated. But then I stop and ask, well, what for? Could it be this is some kind of signal, some kind of attempt to reach out, some kind of escalation to get my attention to have a conversation? And so
and who are you
I
asking?
just assumed it was. I just thought, what if it is? And let's see what happens.
But what are you asking? Are you asking your body? Are you asking your subconscious mind? Who are you having a conversation with? I know it's internal, but with what?
Okay, in my mind, I'm kind of thinking. I'm kind of thinking there is an essence of me. There is a nature. There is a Jaemin that's actually not Jaemin. So when I was born, and I was a firstborn, my parents were very excited to have their first son, and so they had hopes and dreams, doubts and fears, culture and values, and they kind of wrapped all that up and put it on me as a verbal sound, Jaemin. It's like, and not only that, I'm Jaemin Frazer. So now I belong to a group of people who behave a certain way, who believe a bunch of things, who are known for certain traits. Now, I didn't ask for that. I didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't choose that. I just got gifted into a world, and that world wanted things for me and from me. So all that's kind of represented in this idea of Jaemin, but I'm not actually Jaemin. So who am I really? I don't know, but I know I'm not that. I know there's a part of me that precedes that. I've heard the Taoist question: what was the face you had before your parents were born? Yeah. And like, okay, so there's this essence part. Whatever language you want to find for it, your unconscious, your subconscious, the best of you, your heart, your soul. I just know that there's more to me than just my thoughts and emotions, my conscious ideas. And so I watch how I react in any given moment. And I know I'm more than just what I want to do. There's a bunch of other things. So I'm inviting whatever that part is, and the best of that part, and not by choice, because I think I can dominate everything with my conscious mind. But then the pain gives me a reason to go, what's happening here? And there's always a misunderstanding that I have an enemy inside of me. The enemy doesn't want me to run. The enemy doesn't want me to happy. So I have to be like David Goggins and just run. Run when I'm injured, run when I'm tired, run when I don't want to, just get it done. Just dominate like a soldier would. The whole while, if you do that, your unconscious going, like, you're a crazy person and you've misunderstood me and this is so unfair. And here I am being accused of being weak or stupid or pathetic or worthless, and you have misunderstood me and you continue to bully me with that accusation. I have to find a way to have this out with you. I have to find a way to sort this out, because this insecurity is ruining you, and it's ruining who you could be. Therefore, it's ruining the world. So pain is the way into that conversation. And I love how counterintuitive that is, and countercultural, because pain typically gets managed. It gets medicated. It's like, I need to find someone who can stop me feeling pain. And your unconscious,
now I've
got to find a better way to get your attention.
Are you familiar with the work of John Sarno?
I'm not.
John Sarno said the pain that you're feeling is your unconscious mind expressing rage and trying to get your attention so you don't directly feel the emotion. It's giving you a distraction. When you were talking to your pain that was holding you back from running, did you get to a place of resolution, understanding, and freedom so that you can go run pain-free?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
this is the wonderful thing about listening is I think pain is my most loving, honest voice. Like I think about it practically. If I put my hand on the fire and it hurts, that's
Right.
pain lovingly saying, Jaemin, probably take your hand off the fire so you don't ruin it. So here I am. I'm running lead on the project of being Jaemin, and I'm doing it in a short-sighted way with a bunch of narratives that aren't actually true. And the best of me is going, you're a crazy person, and I don't like where you're taking this thing. So there's some better wisdom. There's a better way of doing this. If you listen, we could work together. So,
Yeah.
um, like
And are you suggesting David Goggins needs to do something like this kind of work?
I
Because
think he's too far gone. I think he's so attached to this idea of being superhuman. I think he's a nice enough guy, but I think he's out of control, and I think he's a dangerous voice for people who will be less inclined to ever listen to themselves ever again.
yeah,
Jocko Willink, the same. Like I heard him interviewed on Russell Brand's podcast, and Russell said, can you tell us what you do about your self-talk? Like what happens if you have some negative self-talk? What happens if you have some self-doubt? What happens if you wake up in the morning and you don't want to do the thing you know you must? He says, oh, that's really easy. I just don't have a conversation. I'm not listening. Like I don't negotiate with weakness. I just get it done.
right.
And everyone cheers, oh, you're an incredible person. But if you transferred that kind of language to any interpersonal relationship, that's abuse.
Yeah,
That is the very definition of, dominate, control, abuse. And some
right.
people get away with that, but why would anyone suggest that's best practice for relationships? So,
Yeah.
um,
I love it. I'm glad I asked about that. Well, listen, we're going to run out of time, but I want to make sure I get some other things because you're so fascinating and you have so much to share, and your book is so rich. And you have the 7 essential practices for overcoming insecurity. Do you want to talk about one or two of these 7? Is there an important one and
okay,
one you
sure.
think the most important for people to understand? Then they can go get your book.
Okay, so let's pick number 5. So get help from someone who doesn't care about you.
Yeah. Get help
So
from somebody who doesn't. I love the title. I remember seeing the chapter. Get help from somebody who doesn't care about you. That would stop most people.
yeah, because you'd think if you're insecure, low confidence, low self-esteem, you'd need someone who's going to care for you, love you, support you, believe in you, put air in your tires, wind in your sails. Turns out that's not it at all. In fact, those people get in the way. And here's why. Because in order to rewrite your story, you're going to have to turn all the lights on. You're going to have to examine the structure of your life all the way back to the start. And you've already got a lot of angst and fear around that, and you've been running and hiding from that. So you're very nervous about being exposed already. So you actually can't do self-awareness and self-judgment at the same time.
Hmm.
It's not safe. Your
Mhm.
judgment blocks out awareness, because if you fear that you could be judged, well, then it's not safe to tell the truth. There's always a right answer and a wrong answer. So if you've got someone who wants something for you or from you, you kind of get that it's not safe to fully tell the truth. You could disappoint that person, you could upset them, you could lose their approval. And so then the game becomes the right answer rather than the real answer. So I love going, hey, listen, don't confuse me for someone who cares about you. Like I know I look like a person who cares, but I won't lose any sleep over you. I'll forget about your name. I won't keep you accountable. Like I don't care. I'm not the one who's in pain. I've solved this problem already. I know how to do it. Like I'm not another person who wants you to do something you don't want to do. You tell me what you want though, and I'll give you everything I've got to get you more of that. But you've got
Mhm.
to want it.
Yeah.
Because me wanting it for you is actually really dangerous and will undermine you and weaken your hero's journey. And I think that is the great challenge for therapists and psychologists and coaches, people in the self-help game. I think they actually confuse the world about who the hero is. And
Mm.
if I was to be really honest, I think often they've gone into that space as a way of hiding from their own insecurity. If I
Wow.
can sit behind the desk and be the expert and give advice and help people, well, then I'll know I'm a good person. I'll be insulated from ever having to examine my own inadequacies because I've got this endless source of people needing me. That's how I know I'm good. All along, you kind of need victims. You need to disempower people, because if they ever get healed, they don't need you anymore and you're out of a job. So,
Right. No more money and no more confirmation. Well, look, one of the things in your book that you say, and it's tying into what you're talking about, though, is the idea, and I forget the exact phrase because you'll correct me, because this is so important if I don't get it right. It's the idea that it is almost impossible to take care of insecurity by yourself.
hmm. Well, I think that's true. I think, and the metaphor being the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's great work,
Mhm.
deconstructing storytelling throughout time, mapping out the hero's journey, and it very closely parallels our own journey. But the hero needs a guide, because, without Gandalf, how's Frodo going to make it? Without Mr. Miyagi, what's Daniel's son actually going to do? You know,
Yeah.
Luke, is he going to make it without Yoda? Like, there is always a Dumbledore. There's always the Gandalf. There's the wisdom character, and if you look at the process clearly, they are not the hero, and they are always gone too soon. And then we're back to the weak hero being the one that's got to save the day. But the hero needs a guide. It's a central part of this, and especially when it comes to existential angst, you're so in your head around this. You've got so much evidence that it's true. It's so hard to get outside and have enough objectivity, and you can do it for other people. Like, I love telling stories about other people's defining moments, because when you hear someone else's defining moment, like the shoes or the bike, you go, oh, that's silly. I wouldn't have done that. Great. But what did you do? Because your one's just as silly for everybody else. And you are the only person out of 9 billion in the world who still thinks that accusation's fair and true. But you're so convinced because you're in your own head about it. So very hard to get enough distance from it. So I think that dispassionate wisdom character who knows the way, who's not going to get invested, but can show you a path, can give you the tools, can bring you to the edge of the cave and then get out of the way, because no one's coming to save you. You still got to go into that cave. You got to go face that accusation and see if it's true. There's no other way around it.
Well, I know that you are acting as a guide for lots of other people because you're available to be a coach and a mentor to them through your website. And which website do you want to give out here, by the way?
JaeminFrazer.com, if people can work out how to spell my name. That's the
Jaemin
easiest
Frazer,
place to find me.
Jaemin Frazer, Frazer. And my other question would be, who's been your guide?
I've had a few over the years. One in particular, Greg Bellingham, has been the most important voice through the different seasons, has been the one who's able to show a path without getting in the way. And I'm eternally grateful for the impact he's had in my life.
What if somebody said, and this goes because of your Christian upbringing, being a minister, church affiliation, what if they say, I don't need a guide, I have God?
I missed that question. Sorry. What if
they say, I don't need a guide, I have God?
I don't like telling people what to do, because I think advice is one of the ugliest words in the human language. So my question would be, how well is that working for you? If that is true, if that's actually great, don't let me challenge it. People call me from a place of pain. They call me because things aren't working the way and then pain provides this opportunity for an alternate way to think about things. So I used to get invited to talk to young people about insecurity in high schools, and teachers would be excited and parents would be excited, but you know who's not excited? 17, 18-year-olds. They're not ready for wisdom. They've got to go do their own thing. It's only when they get kind of toward the midlife, when things haven't worked out, that they're like, now I might need to rethink that. So it's just, is it working? Do you have this direct line to God that supersedes any need for any person to hold you in an objective space? Great. I don't know how that works, but if you can do that, don't let me stop you. If it actually isn't getting you that, and for Christians, this is a big challenge, because they assume it should be just an awareness of the love of God that should resolve all insecurity. If I just knew what God thinks about me. But the problem is not what God thinks about you. The problem is what you think about
you. Yes.
So, and you're the storyteller, and you've got the pen, and that's the design. Like, we are conscious beings. We are storytellers. That's how it happens. So
Wow. So let me ask you this. I only have time for one or two questions. I'm going to rapid fire what I can get in here. You knew I was going to interview you. You may or may not knew anything about me, my books, my life. Were you hoping I would ask a particular question? Were you really rubbing your hands together going, oh, I hope Dr. Joe asked me this because I really want to get this message out. This is the thing I want to talk about. What's the question you wish I would have asked?
That if you would ask me if I'm insecure, is there any insecurity in my life?
That was actually on my mind. So, is there any insecurity in your life?
No, not currently. None at all. And that's a bold statement, but a very
Yeah.
important one, because
Yeah.
I think the way this works is the aim of the game is to be completely unhindered at your current level of growth. That is to eradicate all limiting beliefs, all narratives that says I can't be me here, wholeheartedly present and unguarded. So I am here. There's no imposter syndrome. I'm not needing to be someone I'm not. I'm not afraid that anyone's going to find out that I'm not really me. I'm okay. And yet that freedom will always lead to a larger space to play in. I'll say yes to more things. I'll step outside of what I've ever experienced before. And so inevitably, bigger games lead to more uncertainty that go, hang on a minute, I worked out I was good enough for that, but am I good enough for that?
Yeah.
I could play with these people, but could I play with those people? I could earn this money. Could I earn that money? So inevitably, I will experience insecurity again. I hope I experience it again because that's evidence of growth. And when I do, the same 7 practices that solve the problem at the last level of growth will be useful again at the next level.
That is wonderful and very wise. And congratulations on the you're making. I love your book. I have pre-ordered your new book. And what is the title of it? Remind me.
The self-permission method, how to succeed in life without self-discipline.
The self-permission method. How to succeed in life without self-discipline. I can't wait to read it. Partly because everybody, as you've heard out there in the world, talks about discipline. You need more discipline. You need self-discipline. And then you come up and say, actually, you need self-permission. Jaemin Frazer, what would you like to leave people with? Do you have a quote? Do you have a tip? Do you have a to-do? Do you have a suggestion? What are your last words?
Okay, so not only can you completely solve insecurity, you actually must. It is your most important adult work, and not just for you, for the sake of the world. Like, have a look at the state of the world, and the hope for our species is based on secure humans who one by one do the work of healing their own past and coming into the world at a higher level of consciousness. That's the hope, I'm convinced. And so it's a very important job that each of us have to rescue ourselves from these narratives, because insecurity ultimately weakens us to the point of madness and produces evil in the world.
Very well said. Thank you for your unexpected kindness. You said yes, and you've been helping me and a lot of people through your presence here and through your books. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That was lovely.
Everybody, I've been talking to Jaemin Frazer, Jaeminfrazer. Go to jaeminfrazer.com, get his new book or one of the books, the one I have in my hand, Unhindered, the 7 Essential Practices for Overcoming Insecurity. Break free and then go accomplish some great things. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. You've been listening or watching Zero Limits Living. Every week I bring you a new episode. There's 1,000 places you can see or watch these shows, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon, and anything you can list. Go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com. ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, and you can binge on all the episodes. Want to thank Lux Media Studios, Chris running the engineering, Candace Barr for giving me a shot at doing this, and all of you for being here. I love you all. Expect miracles.